I came home from Germany 3 weeks before Christmas. The plane touched down in Minneapolis on a Sunday afternoon with snow on the runway, and when I walked out of arrivals, my husband was waiting with our daughter on his shoulders. Maya slid down his back before I could set my duffel down. "You're heavier," I said into her hair. "You're taller," she said back. On the drive home to Stillwater, Maya pulled something out from under her jacket. My father's silver dog tag, dented from his Vietnam tour. She'd been wearing it under her hoodie since his funeral 2.5 years ago. "I kept him with me," she said. I knew. Eli glanced at me in the mirror. We didn't have to say it out loud. That night, after Maya was in bed, I walked to the hall closet. The cedar box sat on the top shelf where my husband had moved it from storage. My father's handwriting on the brass tag tied to the latch, "For Maya, when the time comes." 3 weeks until Christmas Eve. 3 weeks until the trust paperwork could legally move. I ran my hand along the leather strap and closed the door. The group text came on a Tuesday morning while I was making pancakes. It was from my mother. The subject line read Christmas Eve dinner. Bringing presents. Then, bringing presents for the kids. Sophie and Jackson get something special. Maya's welcome, too. Of course. I read it twice. Then I read it again. The of course sat in the message like a dropped pebble in clean water. Maya climbed onto the counter stool next to me and read it over my shoulder. She didn't say anything. She just leaned her head against my arm. Eli was at the dining table. I turned the phone toward him. He read the message, then walked to his office and came back with a thick black binder. He opened it on the counter. "Folder 47, he said quietly. The binder was organized by date. Photos, screenshots, printed emails, voicemail transcripts. 8 years of them. He showed me a photograph from Maya's first birthday. My mother in the background, in focus, not looking at either of them. Gift card in her hand for Sophie. Forgot Maya's gift this year. An email from my sister Heather, accidentally copied to Eli. The line read, 'Your little project,' referring to Maya. A voicemail transcript from my Aunt Linda. 'Pat, do we have to have the adopted one over for Easter?' My mother had not corrected her. He slipped the new text into the next plastic sleeve, time-stamped it, and closed the binder. 47, he said again. I placed my hand on the cover. Walter saw all of this. He saw it before we did. Eli nodded once. He didn't have to say anything else. That Sunday night, I tucked Maya into bed. She had the dog tag in her small hand, chain wrapped twice around her wrist. "Mom," she said, "will Grandma read Grandpa's letter this Christmas?" I'd been waiting for this question. I'd rehearsed answers with Eli a dozen times. None of them felt right when I was looking at her face. "We'll see, sweetie. Maybe she will. Maybe she won't. What if she won't? Then I'll read it for her aloud in front of everyone." Maya thought about that. The lamp made small triangles of yellow on her bedspread. "Either way," I said, "you're going to hand her the box. That's your part. Your grandpa wanted you to give it to her. Not me. Not Dad. You." "Why me?" "Because he said you were brave enough." "What if I'm scared?" "You can be scared. Brave is scared and still walking forward." She turned the dog tag over so the dented edge faced up. "Grandpa was scared sometimes too, right?" "Plenty of times." "Okay," she said. I smoothed the hair off her forehead. "I see you, Maya. Grandpa saw you too." She smiled the small, careful smile she'd had since she was a toddler. She closed her hand around the dog tag and turned to face the wall. Christmas Eve morning arrived with snow. By 8 o'clock, the driveway needed shoveling. I laid out my dress uniform on the bed, service blues, ribbons polished, name tape on the right side. My father had liked the uniform. Today it was going to matter. I tucked his dog tag inside the collar. The dented edge sat warm against my skin. Maya came in wearing the red velvet dress Eli had made for her, white tights, black Mary Janes. Her hair was in 2 French braids. She had my father's old watch on her left wrist, set to the wrong time on purpose, because she liked it that way. "You look like Mom from a Christmas movie," she said. "You look like you," I said. Stillwater in December looks like a town built for Hallmark cards. Brick storefronts, white lights, the river frozen at the edges. My mother's house was a Victorian 4 blocks up from Maine. The driveway was full when we pulled in. My sister's SUV, my brother-in-law's pickup, my aunt's old Buick with the rosary hanging from the mirror. Eli parked behind the Buick. Maya sat in the back with the cedar box on her lap, both hands flat across the lid. "We okay?" Eli said. "We're okay." The brass bell on the front door rang as we stepped inside. My mother met us in the foyer. She hugged my sister first, even though Heather had already been there 2 hours. She kissed Sophie's hair. She gave Jackson a pat on the head. She turned to me and gave me a tight half-smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Ivy, you look thin." "Hi, Mom." She looked past Maya. Past her like Maya was a coat someone had hung on the wrong hook. "Oh," she said. "You brought her." Maya didn't flinch. She set the cedar box down by her boots and walked into the kitchen with Eli. My mother and I followed. The kitchen smelled like butter and clove. Sophie and Jackson were already at the counter with cookies. 3 small plates with their names. No plate for Maya. Eli quietly took a 4th plate down from the cabinet and set it next to mine. He put 2 cookies on it and nodded at Maya. She climbed up onto the stool between us. From the doorway, I could hear my mother and Aunt Linda by the stove. "Pat, you don't have to make a fuss for Maya. She's not really family. You said it best." My mother laughed once, soft. "Well, you said it. I'm only quoting." Heather walked past with a casserole dish. She didn't react. The kitchen is the size of a hallway. She must have heard. Eli's jaw set. He didn't turn. He didn't say anything. He picked up the cookie plate and walked it over to Maya. I felt my chest go very quiet. The way it goes before a difficult deposition. I'd heard versions of this line for 8 years through screenshots and documents. I had never heard it from Linda's mouth in real time with my daughter 12 feet away. Maya was watching the snow through the window. She had heard. I could tell from the small set of her jaw. She didn't say anything. She bit her gingerbread cookie at the edge first, the way Walter had taught her. My mother called us to dinner at 6:30. The dining room had been laid out the way my father used to lay it out before he died. Green and gold table runner, candles burning in the holders he had turned on his lathe in 1987. My mother had seated Sophie on her right and Jackson on her left. Aunt Linda, my sister, my brother-in-law across from them. 2 empty chairs at the far end and 1 folding chair in the corner with a paper Santa plate and a juice box. Maya looked at the card table. Then she looked at me. Eli was already moving. He picked up the folding chair, walked it across the room, and set it down between his place and mine. He picked up the paper plate and juice box. He nudged the chair in for Maya. "Maya sits with us, Pat," he said. His voice was warm, the way he talks to permitting clerks. Always has. My mother's lips pinched. Aunt Linda's eyebrows went up. My mother opened her mouth. Then she closed it. "Of course," she said brightly. "More room for the pavlova." Dinner went the way it always went. Aunt Linda told the same story about the 1987 ice storm. My brother-in-law asked David questions about the playoffs. My sister asked me 3 polite questions about Germany, none of them about Maya. Maya ate. She didn't speak unless she was asked. She kept 1 foot on the cedar box under her chair, the way I'd taught her, so she could feel it the whole time. After the dishes were cleared, my mother announced it was time for presents. She had wrapped them herself in matching gold paper with red ribbon. She handed Sophie a flat rectangle. "For my smart girl." Sophie tore through it. "iPad Pro. The new one." Sophie made the sound 10-year-olds make. My mother handed Jackson a square box. "And for my little engineer, Nintendo Switch OLED." He yelled. Sophie yelled. My mother walked back to the side table. She picked up a small flat envelope. She walked over to where Maya was sitting between Eli and me. She handed Maya the envelope with 2 hands, like a small ceremony. "Here you go, sweetheart. Merry Christmas." Maya opened it. A drugstore Christmas card with a printed snowman. No money inside. No note. Just the card. Sophie looked up from her iPad. "Mom, where's Maya's iPad?" My mother quickly. "Sophie, hush. We have rules." The rules had never been written down. The rules had never been explained to anyone except the 4 adults in the room who had nodded along to them since 2017. My mother walked back to the tree. She came back with a small velvet ring box. She knelt beside Sophie's chair and opened it. A gold chain, a heart pendant, an engraved letter on the front. "This was Grandma Jones, sweetie," my mother said. "For my real granddaughter." The word real landed on the tablecloth like a coin. Sophie blinked. She knew that word mattered. She let my mother clasp the chain around her neck. Maya looked at her hands in her lap. I kept my face very still. I'd been practicing it in mirrors since I was 7 years old. I felt the dog tag against my collarbone under my service blues. I focused on the feeling of the dented edge against my skin. Aunt Linda nodded approvingly. Joan would have wanted that. My mother produced one more present, a small white envelope. She handed it to Jackson. "For your savings, my smart little man." Jackson opened it. $500 bills, crisp from the bank. "Say thank you, Jack." "Thank you, Grandma." "Thank you, Aunt Linda." Aunt Linda laughed. "Don't spend it all on candy." My mother did not hand Maya another envelope. I picked up my water glass. I drank from it. I set it down. I cut a piece of brisket I was not going to eat and moved it around my plate. Maya looked at me. She looked at Eli. She looked at the cedar box under her chair. Heather brought the apple pie out on a glass cake stand. She set it in the middle of the table. My mother tapped her wine glass with a butter knife. The room quieted. "I just want to say something," my mother said, "before we get into the pie." She looked around the table. She smiled at Sophie. She smiled at Jackson. She smiled vaguely past Maya. "Family is everything," she said. "Your grandfather, rest his soul, used to say it all the time. Family is blood." That's what he said. "Sophie, Jackson, you're my heart. You always will be." David shifted in his chair. Heather's eyes were a little too bright. I put my hand on Maya's hand. She let me. Eli silently reached for his phone, opened the voice memo app, and pressed record. He set it face down on the table between us. "To the kids," my mother said, raising her glass. Heather raised hers. Aunt Linda raised hers. David raised his. I did not raise mine. Eli did not raise his. Maya did not raise her water glass. My mother drank and sat down. She seemed pleased with herself. She passed the pie around. Heather served Sophie. Aunt Linda served Jackson. No one served Maya. Eli quietly stood, cut a slice for Maya himself, and set it in front of her with a small dollop of cream. My mother watched him. She did not say anything. "And speaking of family," my mother said, picking up her wine glass. "Heather, dear, I've been thinking about the lake cabin for next summer. The Airbnb has been such a nice little business. I think we should fix up the dock this year. Screen in the porch." Heather brightened. "Oh, Mom, that's a great idea." "We did about 4,000 last August," my mother said. Imagine what a screened porch would do. Eli's hand found my knee under the table. He squeezed. My mother was telling everyone at the table that she had been turning my father's lake cabin into a rental property. She could not know that the cabin had not been hers to rent for 2.5 years. She was monetizing something she did not own. She was monetizing it in front of the 8-year-old who owned it. The pie was on the table. It was time. I gave Maya the smallest nod. Maya set her fork down. She wiped her mouth on her napkin the way Eli had taught her. She folded the napkin once and set it next to her plate. She slid down off the folding chair and reached under to lift the cedar box with both hands. The leather strap dangled. She walked the long way around the dining table, past my sister, past my brother-in-law, past Aunt Linda. The wood floor creaked under her Mary Janes. "Maya," my sister said. "What are you doing?" Maya didn't answer. She walked past Heather. She stopped at the head of the table where my mother was sitting with her wine and her pie and her satisfied smile. She set the cedar box on the table in front of my mother. She slid it forward until the front edge touched my mother's plate. She kept her hands on the box for a moment. Then she let go. She put her hands at her sides, the way my father had taught her. She tilted her chin up just a little. The room was very quiet. The fire popped once in the wood stove. "Grandma," Maya said in a voice that was small but clear. "Mom told me to give this to you if you ever ignored me again." My mother stared at the box. Then she stared at Maya. Then she stared at me. "What is this?" my mother said, very small. Maya had been told not to say anything else. She had practiced this for 3 weeks. She stood at attention next to the head of the table, her chin tilted up, her hands at her sides. My mother looked at the brass tag tied to the latch. The tag read, "For Maya when the time comes." She recognized the handwriting. She recognized my father's handwriting. I watched the color go out of her cheeks. "Ivy," she said. "What is this?" "It's for you, Mom. Open it." She put her hand on the latch. Her hand was shaking very slightly. The brass latch made a small dry sound. She opened it. The lid creaked. The cedar smell came up out of the box, and my mother recognized it. My father had varnished it 3 times with linseed oil from his workshop. Inside the box, in neat order, were 3 things. A manila folder labeled in my father's handwriting, "Holland's Family Trust, Irrevocable, executed June 14, 2023. A second manila folder labeled, "Beneficiary Maya Rose Andrews." And a 4x6 photograph. My father, sunburned, in his blue work shirt. Maya was 2 years old, sitting on his lap, both of them grinning. Maya had her hand on his beard. My mother made a small sound. Not a word. A breath in. She reached for the photograph and stopped. Her hand hovered over it. "Walter," she said like a question. "Yes," I said. She looked at me. For a moment, her face was something else. Not angry. Bewildered. Then her face hardened again. She picked up the first folder. She opened it. The trust document was 18 pages. She read the first page. She read the second page. She got to the page that listed the lake cabin under the heading Trust Property. She inhaled sharply. She did not exhale. "This isn't real," she said. "It's real, Mom. This isn't legal. It's legal. This is some sort of joke. Look at the signature." She looked at the signature on page 18. She looked at George Whelan's notarization stamp. She looked at the date. She looked at the witness signatures. The paralegal and my father's old shop foreman, both notarized. She put her hand to her mouth. "He didn't tell me." "No, he didn't." She turned the page. She saw the deed transfer. Lake cabin, 360 acres, Pine County, Transferred into the Hollins Family Trust on June 14, 2023. Beneficiary: Maya Rose Andrews. She set the trust folder down. She picked up the cream envelope. She read the wax seal aloud in a very flat voice. To be opened by Patricia in front of family when Maya is ready. She broke the seal. She unfolded the letter. My father's handwriting filled the entire page, front and back. She read silently. Her lips moved a little. Her eyes moved down the page. Her face went white. She closed the letter. She put it back in the envelope. She set it on the table. I can't read this aloud, she said. Read it, Mom. He wrote it for you to read aloud. Ivy, please. Read it, Mom. I stood up. I walked around the table. I stopped at her shoulder. I took the envelope gently from her hand. I did not look at her face. I unfolded my father's letter. I looked at his handwriting. The looped Y, the slant, the narrow T. I had not read this letter before. He had told me what was in it. He had not let me read it. I read it in my JAG officer voice. The voice I used for court memos. Even. Measured. Patricia, I am writing this in July of 2023, the summer I learned my heart is failing. I have known for 40 years that you measure people by the wrong yardstick. You measure them by blood, by name, by whether they listened to your mother in 1968. You do not measure them by what they do, who they love, how they show up. The room was completely silent. I cannot forgive you for our granddaughter Maya. From the day Ivy and Eli carried her into our house, you decided she was not yours. I watched you decide it. You said she's not really family. I never forgot it. I have never forgotten anything you have said about that little girl. Aunt Linda put a hand over her mouth. You skipped her at her first birthday. You skipped her at her christening. You sent Sophia a savings bond and Maya a coloring book. You told my sister-in-law at a barbecue in 2019 that you were tolerating her. I heard you. I was on the other side of the fence with the dogs. David lowered his beer. I am writing this because I do not think you are going to change. I have spent 2 years hoping. I do not believe my hope will outlive me. So I have done what I should have done in 2017. I have put the lake cabin into a trust for Maya. I have put my retirement bonds into the trust for Maya. I have put the proceeds from my shop tools into the trust for Maya. The trust is irrevocable. It cannot be undone. You cannot challenge it in court. I turned the page. She is my granddaughter in every sense that matters. If you are reading this, Patricia, then you have failed Maya again. You have ignored her on a day that matters. So now she has a home that you cannot take away from her. And it is not the home you are planning to monetize. Sign the audit paperwork. Pay the trust back. Look at the child you have refused to see. Walter. I folded the letter. I set it gently on the table next to the cedar box. My mother did not say anything for a long time. Her hand was still over her eyes. She picked up the trust folder. She turned to the deed page. She looked at the cabin transfer. She turned to the audit clause and read it. The audit clause required the trustee, me, to recover all income generated from trust property since June 14, 2023. The cabin had been rented as a vacation property. My mother had collected the rent. My mother had collected, as I had calculated 3 months ago with my Army financial counselor, approximately $96,000 in rental income across 80 weeks. With the 7% interest, the audit number was approximately $103,000. She read the audit clause twice. She closed the folder. She stood up so fast the chair scraped backward and hit the wall. Her wine glass was in her hand. The glass cracked. A drop of wine ran down her wrist. He gave her the cabin, she said. Then she made a sound. Not a word. Not crying. A small wordless scream, sharp, single. The sound an animal makes when it steps wrong. He gave her the cabin, she said again, louder. He gave the cabin to. She did not finish the sentence. Aunt Linda was on her feet, hands flapping. Pat, it's all right. We'll figure this out. There has to be some way. She's not really family, Pat. You said it best. The line landed in the room like a coin dropping into quiet water for the second time that night. But this time, the room was different. This time, the room was paying attention. Sophie covered her mouth with both hands. David turned to look at his wife. His face was the face of a man who had just realized he had been at the wrong dinner for 10 years. My mother turned slowly to her sister. Linda, shut up. Aunt Linda's mouth stayed open. She closed it. She sat down. I did not smile. I did not have to. I looked at Maya. She was still standing at attention beside my mother's chair. She had not moved during the entire reading. She had not flinched. Maya, sweetheart, I said gently. Come sit by me. Maya walked the long way back around the table. The wood floor creaked under her Mary Janes. She sat down between Eli and me. Eli put his hand on her shoulder. Maya put her hand over his. I waited. I waited until my mother was looking at me again. I waited until Linda had stopped tearing at her napkin. I waited until David was looking at the table. I waited until Sophie's hand had come down from her mouth. The fire crackled in the wood stove. Outside, the snow had picked up. I stood up. Slowly. Centered. Both feet planted. The way I stood in court before reading a charge. The room did not need me to raise my voice. The room was already listening. Mom, I said. Let me walk you through it. I kept my voice in the cadence I had been taught at OCS. Even. Measured. One sentence per breath. The Holland Family Trust is irrevocable. It was executed by Dad on June 14, 2023, with attorney George Whelan of Whelan and Sons in Duluth, Minnesota. The sole beneficiary of the trust is Maya Rose Andrews. The trustee is me until Maya turns 25. I looked at the table. The lake cabin transferred to trust ownership on Dad's death date, October 22, 2023. From that date forward, you did not own the cabin. You did not have the legal authority to rent it. You did not have the legal authority to keep the rental income. The audit clause in the trust requires me to recover all income generated from trust property plus 7% interest. By my calculation, you've collected approximately $96,000 in rental income across 80 weeks. The audit number with interest is approximately $103,000. I let that sit. The audit will be conducted by Wayne and Sons starting January 7th. You will receive certified notice by mail next week. I am not asking for the money back, Mom. The trust is asking. I am the messenger. My mother stood up again. She was past white now. She was flushed. Her hands were shaking. She pointed at me. Then she pointed at Maya. Then she pointed at me again. You knew. You knew the whole time. You let me rent it out. You watched for years. You watched me. Your own mother. You let me steal from a child. No, Mom. I let you choose. Every month I let you choose. Every Christmas I let you choose. What is that supposed to mean? You had 2.5 years to be Dad's wife, to be the person he thought he had married. You kept choosing not to. You kept choosing the cabin rentals instead of his granddaughter. He gave you a choice every single day. You chose the wrong thing. She put her hands flat on the table. She leaned into them. Her chest moved up and down. This is cruel, Ivy. This is cruel. This is January 7th, Mom. This is paperwork. This is what Dad asked me to do. She made the second sound. It was bigger than the first. The kind that comes out of grief instead of anger. She covered her face with both hands. Maya watched her. Maya did not look afraid. Maya looked at my mother the way my father had once looked at a wounded deer he had to put down in the fall of 2009. It was not satisfaction on my daughter's face. It was not even forgiveness. It was, I think, the beginning of understanding. I walked around the table to Maya. I knelt by her chair. I smoothed her braid. The dog tag under my collar moved against my collarbone. I see you, Maya. She looked up at me. Her eyes were dry. She had been ready for this. Grandpa saw me too, she said. I stood up. Eli was already on his feet. He pulled Maya's coat off the back of the chair. He helped her into it. He buttoned the top button under her chin. I turned to the table. Patricia, the cabin will be cleared and the keys returned by July 1st. The audit is January 7th. You will be notified by mail. Aunt Linda. Do not call. Not for any reason. Not for Easter. Not for anyone's birthday. Do not write. Do not show up. Aunt Linda nodded into her napkin. Heather. When Sophie is older, not next year, when she chooses, she can write to Maya. Until then, you don't write either. You don't text. You don't drop by. Sophie can choose for herself in her own time. That's between Sophie and Maya. Heather nodded once. Sophie was crying quietly into her napkin. David just nodded. He had never been the problem. He also had never been the solution. I picked up my coat. I picked up Maya's small hand. Eli held the door. The brass bell on the door rang as we stepped into the cold. The SUV started slow. Eli let it idle a minute and turned the heater on. Maya sat in her booster seat in the back, the cedar box on her lap, her hand flat across the lid. She did not say anything for a while. Eli pulled out of the driveway. The Christmas lights on the porch railing reflected off the snow. The house got smaller in the rearview mirror. None of us looked back. After about 10 minutes, Maya said, "Mom, will Grandma write back?" "Probably not, sweetie." Okay. She was quiet for a while longer. The heat finally hit her in the back seat. She unzipped her coat. She kept her hand on the cedar box. Then she said, "I like the cabin." "Good," Eli said gently. "We're going next summer." Another quiet stretch. The wipers ticked. The heater hummed. Then Maya said, "Mom, can I bring my friend Tessa to the cabin?" I laughed. It was the first time I had laughed in 3 weeks. I had to wipe my eyes. "Yes, baby. You can bring whoever you want. It's your cabin." She thought about that. The snow blew against the windshield. The dashboard glowed green. "It's our cabin," she said. "Yes, sweetie. It's ours." She put her cheek against the cedar box. She closed her eyes. By the time we hit the highway, she was asleep with her hand still flat against the lid. Eli reached over and took my hand. We did not say anything for the rest of the drive home. March came hard that year. The audit was settled by the middle of the month. My mother paid the trust $13,200. The wire transfer came through on a Tuesday at 11 in the morning. Maya sang the alto part in the spring concert. Eli took her to the diner afterward for pancakes. I watched the video 3 times on the plane back to Fort McCoy. Heather sent me one email in February. The subject line was blank. The message was one sentence. "I'm sorry I didn't see her sooner." I read it twice and closed the tab. Aunt Linda did not call. She did not write. She quietly removed herself from the family group text. Sophie sent Maya a handmade Easter card in April. Pink construction paper. 2 girls holding hands. A note inside. "I miss you. Mom says I can write you when I want. Love, Sophie." Maya wrote back. A short letter. Kind. She signed it with a small heart. The cedar box lives on our mantelpiece now. The varnish has darkened a little with age. My father's silver dog tag rests on top of it, the dented edge facing up. The chain coiled the way Maya likes it. I made captain selection for promotion to lieutenant colonel last month. My next station is the Pentagon. We will keep the house in Stillwater. Maya wants to keep the house in Stillwater. I learned one thing from my father after he was gone that I am not sure I would have learned any other way. Family isn't a line you draw with blood. It's a chair you set at the table every single time, even when other people pretend the chair isn't there. That's my story. A cedar box. A father who saw clearly. And an 8-year-old who knew what to do.